When this local woman got home from work, she unexpectedly got the fright of a lifetime. Strange noises came from her shed, indicating something was moving around inside. And when she opened the wooden doors, she stood face to face with an unknown elderly man. When she found out who he really was, the woman turned pale instantly. Woman discovers old man hiding in her shed, turns pale when she finds out who he is. When Naomi heard the weird sound on her property, she put the house keys back in her pocket and peeked her ears. It wasn't there constantly, but often enough to pinpoint its location. "It's the shed," the young woman said, confused. "What is it?" Naomi said, knowing that the structure only consisted of stationary tools. Naomi approached the abandoned shed quietly so she wouldn't spook what was inside. What if it was something dangerous? When Naomi reached the old wooden structure, she put her ear to the door. It was initially quiet, and Naomi almost thought she had imagined everything. But then she heard the sound of things falling over. Slowly, Naomi opened the door to see what was hiding inside. Her initial guess was a raccoon or a bagger. But what she found was far more disturbing. Naomi witnessed nothing out of the ordinary. A few trash cans lay on their sides, which added validity to her bagger idea. But then Naomi saw movement. Naomi gazed at the corner of the shed. It only held a large dumpster Naomi used for cleaning the garden. But this large metal container had a secret hiding behind it. And it was ready to reveal itself. A frail old man rose from behind it and looked back at Naomi, causing her to scream. The man appeared just as shaken up as Naomi was. But it never came to a confrontation. Naomi didn't feel the need to come any closer. She did the opposite. When the old man tried to form words, Naomi took a few steps back and quickly closed the shed's door before sprinting away. The scared young woman locked herself in the safe environment of her own home. She grabbed her phone and called 911. A man invaded her property, so the police needed to take care of this. The phone rang, and Naomi's shaky hand brought the device to her ear. "Hello? Police department? I need help." Naomi did her best to explain what she had witnessed. Her pleading words caused the police operator to send over a unit. "They'll be there in 10. While the cops were on their way, Naomi waited nervously, peeking through the blinds constantly to see if the man tried to escape. But no attempt was made. 10 minutes later, the police arrived. Naomi watched as the cop car pulled up on her driveway with flickering lights. Unfortunately for Naomi, the old man noticed this as well. So, as the officers walked up to her front door, Naomi saw how the old man slipped out of the wooden structure in her garden. For a man who made so much noise in her shed before, he sure was quiet this time. The police didn't notice a thing. The now frustrated and scared Naomi opened the front door and gestured to the police officers that the suspect was escaping. She pointed and shouted, but weirdly enough, with no result. The officers came across as uninterested and just calmly followed protocol. They even told Naomi to slow down while explaining things. But that was impossible because, behind the officers, Naomi saw how the man left the shed and escaped her garden through a hole in the hedge. The carelessness of the policeman made that possible. Naomi was disappointed that the police's carelessness caused the escape. She still guided them to her shed, though. "Maybe if he left evidence behind, it could help, too," she said reassuringly. The two cops strolled around the garden, even cracking a joke along the way, while Naomi's face grew more frustrated as she watched them. Naomi opened her shed. The place was stuffed with tools, so it was logical that the man knocked over some things in the room while navigating in darkness. But when the police looked around, they found no trace of the man ever being there. They assured Naomi they would check the neighborhood, however. With the lack of interest these police officers showed, Naomi felt that their watchkeeping wouldn't be thorough. Naomi also wasn't all that satisfied with how the policemen searched her shed. They were in and out in a hurry and couldn't have looked at everything. That's why she took it upon herself to look again. It was her shed, and she knew best what was supposed to be there. So, how could two strangers tell what was misplaced? Naomi searched every corner. The first 5 minutes were fruitless. Naomi arrived at the same conclusion the cops did. Everything seemed normal. But then she spotted something that did not belong there. "What is that?" Naomi spoke as she reached out and grabbed a pink-colored music box. The box looked old and quite plain, and the music emanating from it sounded awful. She brought it to the main house to inspect it further. But while the object didn't belong to her, it did not tell her much. With no result after inspecting the strange box and with no update from the police, Naomi tried to put the day's events behind her. Maybe it was a random one-time occurrence. Naomi poured herself a cup of tea and put on her movie. She hoped that it would take her mind off of things, but during the movie, she found that her head often lingered toward the garden window, and even far after the movie ended, the old man dominated her day. Naomi then tried to sleep and end this horrible day. But her mind constantly thought about the old man. What was he doing there? After a night where Naomi was almost completely deprived of sleep, the alarm on her nightstand went off. Reality kicked in, and Naomi had to get dressed and go to work. The young woman dreaded this ever since the realization kicked in that she had to leave her house unattended to do so. She called in a favor with her mother to give herself peace of mind. The old woman lived close by and was retired, so she had enough time to check in. Naomi pressed her mother's name on her phone, which was on speed dial since they spoke daily, and asked her desperately for help. And, of course, Sarah, Naomi's mother, agreed. The help from her mother calmed Naomi down a bit. But she still checked her phone while working. But after 8 hours, not a single update arrived. The worried woman called her mother and demanded an explanation. But what she got from her mother was very unexpected. The demeanor in her mother's voice was off. Sarah grunted and puffed a lot. When Naomi asked about the house and if the old man had found his way back there, Sarah simply replied no before falling silent again. Sarah was normally very chatty, so this kind of curt behavior was very out of character. Naomi questioned her mother's weird behavior. But what she got in response was even more odd. Her mother got angry and stated that her daughter needed to let this obsession go. "I am not your secretary, so I don't intend to message you 24/7. Sarah became hostile and evasive. Something wasn't right. After hearing her mother's unreasonable arguments, Naomi got angry, too. And for the first time in almost 2 years, the family duo argued. Naomi called out her mother's nonsense and said that she would come over to settle this debate. But Sarah didn't want this. She sounded panicky and asked her daughter to stay away. Sarah told her daughter she was very busy and that another day would suit her better. But Naomi knew her mother was hiding something and wouldn't listen. "I don't care, Mother. I will be there within 15 minutes, and you'd better be home." Naomi got in her car and drove as fast as she could. Naomi reached her parental home in record time and rang the doorbell, but no one answered. Naomi then checked the windows, but no movement was seen. She did, however, hear something. She heard her mother shouting, and not to herself. Who is she talking to? Naomi used her spare key to open the door herself. She followed the sound to the kitchen, where her mother greeted her with an uncomfortable smile. But Naomi wasn't going to fall for this veiled if of kindness. The suspicious Naomi walked past her mother and inspected the kitchen. There were 2 empty coffee cups in the sink. Was there someone in here before? Sarah explained that her sister came by unexpectedly, and they drank coffee together. But Naomi immediately heard the lying in her mother's voice. So slightly irritated, she confronted her about it. "Speak the truth, Mother." After that remark, Sarah started crying. She begged Naomi to let it go and head on home. "You wouldn't understand." Naomi obliged, not knowing that a huge surprise awaited her. When she arrived home, her sanctuary was compromised, and when Naomi reached the back of her home, she saw that the door was open. "Is there someone here?" Naomi searched her entire house but found no one. Were her paranoid thoughts playing games with her? There seemed to be no one around. Did I forget to lock the door? Did the wind weirdly catch the handle? Many possibilities plagued her mind. But when Naomi reached her living room, they were all dismissed because she found the music box from the day before. And it was not where she left it. Naomi remembered putting the box in her hallway cabinet. She did this on purpose because the cabinet had always been her own personal lost and found. But when Naomi arrived in her living room, the box stood firmly in the center of her table. And this time, there was a note attached to it. Nervously, Naomi picked up the note and read it. "Play me fully to get the answers you seek," it said. She was still afraid that someone was in her house, and she wasn't 100% convinced that this person had left. But at least this was progress toward answers. The box played its horrible music again. Naomi listened intently, hoping the crackly song could give her a clue. She persisted, even though the sound hurt her ears. The song, however, did not present Naomi with these answers. But they did show themselves immediately afterward, because when the song ended, the bottom of the box popped open, revealing a hidden compartment. Something was nudged in there. With trembling hands, Naomi pulled out 2 items. One was an old, wrinkly picture. The other was a large document that was folded several times. When Naomi inspected the picture, she instantly turned pale. This can't be. In the picture was a small girl, and Naomi instantly recognized her. Because she was this little girl, next to Naomi stood a man she did not recognize. She squinted her eyes, trying to identify the individual, but found her mind empty. She then unfolded the document, seeing a birth certificate with her name on it. The final clue was found on the back of the photo. Naomi was crying when she read the message on the back of the photo: "If you want answers, come to this address." Below it stood the address. Naomi didn't recognize it, but she knew the neighborhood it was in. So, with tear-filled eyes, the young woman got in her car and drove. When Naomi arrived at the address, she knocked on the door twice and waited nervously for the resident to open. And when he did, Naomi let out a high-pitched scream. It was the old man from her shed. Naomi was kind of expecting him. But still, his face frightened her. The old man spoke immediately. He asked Naomi not to run away again. He wanted to explain last time, but with the panic in the shed and the police visit shortly after, he never got the chance. "I will explain everything if you just let me." Naomi nodded while the elderly man invited her inside. Naomi nervously obliged. Naomi took a seat in the man's living room. After this, the old man introduced himself as Carl. The 80-year-old man apologized for the scene in the shed from before. He initially wanted to ring Naomi's doorbell, but chickened out at the last minute. "Instead, I opted for a special gift in your shed. The music box," Naomi said. Carl nodded, saying the puzzle pieces inside should have led Naomi straight to his house. At least, that was what he hoped for. And in a way, his plan worked. Carl hoped to avoid the panic, but Naomi's shed was dark and full of stuff, making him trip multiple times. "Do you have the contents with you?" Carl asked. Naomi grabbed the picture and the document from her coat and placed them on the table. "What does it mean? Please explain, I'm so confused." Carl understood, but what he told Naomi next left her even more bewildered. "Naomi, I am your father." Naomi's eyes teared up. She had a father, a man whom she loved very much and who passed away a few years back. So, Carl's statement didn't make sense. However, Carl continued by giving a detailed account of his relationship with Naomi's mother. It entailed an affair while she was already married to Naomi's father. "We weren't planning on falling in love, things just happened. One thing led to another, and you were born." Carl wanted to love and raise Naomi. However, with Sarah's marriage still stable and intact, they both agreed it could not happen. So, the affair ended. "You grew up with your mother, and I promised to stay away so you could live a normal life." Naomi's father never knew. As far as he was concerned, he was the father. Naomi saw the old man crying during his explanation, and the sight broke her heart a little. The picture is my only souvenir, but I'm hoping for more. Carl tried to start a new family, and they were happy for many years, but never had children. Once my wife died a few years ago, my perspective on life changed. I spend many sleepless nights thinking about lost opportunities and regrets. And my biggest regret was not re-establishing contact with my only child, you. Carl explained that before the shed incident, he visited Naomi's mother multiple times, trying to persuade her to reunite him with his daughter. But Sarah thought that it wasn't a good idea. Even after Naomi's father died, she refused him. So eventually, I went against her wishes and placed that music box in your shed. Carl hoped that this would set things in motion and that Naomi herself would figure it out. I even revisited your house today, hoping to run into you, to apologize and rekindle something. But instead, I ran into your mother. The two former lovers had a heated argument that eventually took them to Sarah's house. The 2 cups of coffee, Naomi said. She looked at the birth certificate with her name and Carl's signature on it. It looked legit, making it hard to dispute the evidence. Naomi started to cry, and Carl looked on, wondering what his daughter was thinking. But then she did something unexpected. Naomi launched herself forward, hugging Carl intensely. It was all Carl could hope for, but it was the last thing he expected. Naomi understood his actions and couldn't imagine the pain he went through all those years. She accepted him and told Carl she would love to get to know him. And so they did. Now, 2 months passed, and the bond between all 3 individuals is incredibly strong. It's like I've known him all my life. I deeply regret not meeting him sooner, but I'm eager to catch up on lost time, Naomi said with a broad smile. Even her mom softened. And together, they looked toward the future.